Leonardo da Vinci is one of the greatest minds in human history. Painter, engineer, inventor, anatomist, his multifaceted genius manifested itself not only in art, but also in incredible inventions and concepts that were ahead of their era. Today, we will talk about his most unusual and visionary designs that could have changed the world if they had been realized in the 15th century. In the Renaissance era, when man was just beginning to realize his capabilities, Leonardo was a true pioneer. His drawings, sketches, and mechanisms are still impressive to this day. In 1485, when flying was just a dream, Leonardo had already designed a parachute. He believed that this device would save people in emergency situations, for example, when evacuating from burning buildings. The principle of the design was simple: to create resistance to the air for safe descent from a height. In Leonardo's opinion, a cone-shaped dome made of dense fabric and a wooden frame, about 5 or 6 meters in size, was ideal for this purpose. However, due to the lack of suitable materials and technologies of the time, it was impossible to realize this idea. Interestingly, only 5 centuries later, the theory of genius was tested in practice. In the year 2000, the Briton Adrian Nicholas decided to build a parachute according to Da Vinci's drawings. His design turned out to be massive. Its weight amounted to an impressive 85 kilograms, because of which there was a fear that the parachute would be too heavy for a safe landing and could injure the parachutist. To minimize the risk, Nicholas provided a spare modern parachute. As a result, he was able to successfully descend from a height of 3,000 meters and thus proved that Leonardo's invention really worked and stably kept a man in the air. However, at the final stage of descent, Adrian still had to use a modern parachute, as the historical design did not provide a soft landing. This experiment confirmed Da Vinci's genius, the workability of his developments, and his ability to foresee solutions that would become reality hundreds of years later. Even more grandiose was his idea of a helicopter, or to be more precise, a specific part of a helicopter, the propeller. This idea was based on the principle of vertical lift. The main structure of the helicopter was a vertical spiral blade with a diameter of about 4 meters made of linen fabric. To the structures were attached to the support struts and ropes, which should have helped to stabilize the device in the air, and the essence was that the rotation of the blade created a lifting force that would allow the device to lift off the ground. So why did this idea fail to materialize? First, the lack of propulsion power. At the time of creation of the drawings in the world, did not exist powerful enough engines to provide the necessary force to rotate the huge blade. Not only did the helicopter require a large blade to get into the air, but it also required significant energy to rotate it. The helicopter would have been too heavy to be lifted by hand or by the mechanisms available at the time. Another problem was materials. The helicopter, according to Leonardo's drawings, would have been made of wood and cloth. These materials did not have the necessary strength and lightness to create an efficiently working flying machine. These days, helicopters are made of high-strength and lightweight alloys to achieve the necessary strength at a low weight. Although this project remained unrealized in Leonardo's time, his idea was truly prophetic. Leonardo may not have been able to envision a device like modern helicopters, but his work was an important step in the development of aviation. His concept of vertical takeoff and the use of rotating blades to create lift is the basis of all modern helicopters. The propeller for lifting into the air and the parachute for returning to the ground are undoubtedly prophetic and daring developments, but the following project is an astonishing feat of engineering for a 15th century citizen. To your attention is the tank. It was developed in 1487 and, in fact, was the first representation of an armored fighting machine in history. This device, which Leonardo drew in his numerous drawings, has several interesting features. It was an armored wheeled vehicle shaped like a hemisphere, with 4 large wheels on each side. The hull of the vehicle was made of metal or wooden plates, which was supposed to protect it from enemy attacks. The dimensions of the tank are quite impressive, about 4 meters in diameter and about 2 meters in height, which made the machine incredibly bulky and heavy and did not allow it to be used in real combat conditions of the time. The tank itself did not have a motor or steam engines like its modern counterparts. Instead, its movement depended on the efforts of men. The drive system was based on a system of levers and wheels that had to be turned manually. The people inside the vehicle turned pedals and levers to drive the large wheels, and these in turn had to drive the tank itself. We understand from Leonardo's drawings that he envisioned his tank being equipped with several guns to attack enemy positions. One of these was the huge arquebuses mounted on the front of the vehicle. These arquebuses were to fire at enemies standing next to the machine or on the walls of the fortress. However, despite the presence of such weapons, Leonardo's battle tank was not designed to fire from a long distance. Rather, it was fired in close combat, which greatly limited its effectiveness. In addition, the very process of loading and firing such guns would have been difficult in the confined space and constant movement. Another interesting feature was the fact that the guns were placed on rotating platforms, allowing soldiers to change the angle of fire. Despite the fact that Leonardo da Vinci's battle tank project was not realized, his concept influenced subsequent developments in the field of military technology. It was Leonardo who first introduced the idea of an armored vehicle that could move across the battlefield while firing on enemies. If you thought the tank was Da Vinci's most daring and visionary design, I hasten to disappoint you and introduce you to the robot. Leonardo designed this project in 1495. This so-called robot was a mechanical device designed to perform automatic actions that could be useful in various areas of life. The robot, which Leonardo called the Mechanical Knight, was designed to stand, move, and even move its arms, a significant step in the development of automatic devices. The design of Leonardo's robot was quite complex and included several key elements. Movement mechanism. The robot was equipped with a system of wires, levers, and gears that provided movement. All of its movements, such as walking and turning, were mechanical, and they depended on the interaction of the various parts of the device. In order for him to move, Leonardo used a system of levers that propelled his legs. These levers were connected to an internal mechanism that made the movements smooth. A system of shoulder and elbow joints was used to control the robot, which allowed it to make basic human-like movements. It was also equipped with a differential mechanism that allowed it to rotate and move in different directions. The movement was also aided by a system of torsion gears and wire tension that transferred motion from one element to another. Leonardo used gearboxes to reduce speed and increase the force of the transferred energy. The artist used the materials available to him, such as wood, metal, gears, ropes, and fabrics, to create the robot. The mechanism used a system similar to the drive mechanisms for clocks and other mechanical devices of the time. This made the robot somewhat similar to a clockwork automaton. Leonardo created the following invention in an attempt to improve the military technology of his time: the machine gun. This multi-barreled weapon, known as the rotary arquebus, was conceived as a way to increase the efficiency of fire and decrease the time between shots. In his design, Leonardo sought to combine mechanical sophistication and military necessity by creating a device that could fire multiple barrels simultaneously, greatly increasing the power of attack. Although his project was never realized, his idea foreshadowed the technology that was later used to create the first machine guns. Da Vinci's machine gun was a kind of 8-barrel machine, each barrel arranged in a circle. At the base of the design was an axis that could rotate, setting the barrels in motion. This mechanism was turned by manual labor, and each barrel, passing in turn, was prepared to fire. Da Vinci carefully considered how to increase the frequency of fire, proposing a system in which several barrels could fire almost simultaneously, each with a special mechanism to feed the bullets and release them. His machine gun could operate on the principle of mechanical rotation, with each barrel successively taking up a position to fire. As a result of this approach, firing would essentially never stop. As soon as one barrel fired a bullet, a new barrel would take its place, and then the process would repeat. This idea was generally similar to how modern machine guns with rotating drums work, making Leonardo da Vinci's invention a harbinger of what would emerge only a few centuries later. While his weapon was meant to be fired using a manual drive, the modern machine gun utilizes an automatic mechanism, greatly speeding up the rate of fire. However, despite its genius, Leonardo's machine gun was not suitable for use in combat of its time. There were several reasons for this. First, even by today's standards, the design was cumbersome and complex. The manually operated rotating mechanism required tremendous force, and with this design, the weapon would have been too heavy for quick maneuverability on the battlefield. Secondly, the materials available to Leonardo did not allow for a strong and light enough construction for such a weapon. The metals of the time were too heavy, and an effective machine gun would have required lighter and stronger alloys that did not become available until many centuries later. Finally, there was a lack of technology to automate the reloading process and feed ammunition at a rate that would allow the weapon to operate effectively in real combat conditions. Thus, despite the great engineering idea, it was impossible to realize his idea. However, it is important to note that Da Vinci's machine gun design had a significant impact on the future. His concept of a multiple-shot weapon with a rotary mechanism served as an inspiration for future generations of inventors. Over the centuries, engineers tried to find ways to realize this idea, and it was not until the 19th century, with the development of more sophisticated mechanisms and materials, that real machine gun analogs appeared, such as the Gatling machine gun, which to some extent replicated Da Vinci's design. All of the above ideas explain for the 1000th time why the words genius and discoverer are so often found in the same sentence with the great scientist's name. Leonardo's genius was so great that there are enough bold concepts for the second part of this video. So if you want to see the continuation, let me know about it by means of likes and comments. I'd love to read them. Glad to steal your time. See you soon.